Since we're now fully deep into the offseason, fans have been given a chance to truly assess the landscape of the league post-free agency and take a closer look at how some of their teams may look ahead of this upcoming season. For the most part, this conversation has been focused on teams that made big off-season free agency signings, whether that be the Kings acquiring Harrison Barnes Part 2 and DeMar DeRozan, or the Sixers going all in to pick up Paul George just to get smacked around by the Knicks again.
This is worthless.
There's been no shortage of topics to talk about. However, one thing I found interesting this offseason, and really this year, is that a lot of really good young players have been getting overlooked as they've seemingly begun to fade away and the narratives on their career have begun to take shape. And I think that's a big mistake, because there are some real hoopers who are in a prime position to take that next step this season, and they aren't getting a lot of coverage. So as my gift to you all today, I'm going to highlight 3 players who are set to make the jump next season. For our first player, we have LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball is undeniably one of my favorite players that I've been able to watch. And not just in the NBA, but as a guy who supported him since high school, I must be honest, it's been a tumultuous ride. Now, I won't rehash his entire basketball journey from high school to overseas to back to high school to the Drew League to the NBA, but I will say that it's not a new thing to have people doubt his capabilities, but to see him be blatantly overlooked and left out of conversations period is pretty wild. Unfortunately for Melo, he's been trapped in a Charlotte organization that should be thankful that the Detroit Pistons are as incompetent as they are, because otherwise, they'd be in the running for the least serious franchise potentially in all of sports history. They've only had 10 playoff appearances, and if you'd like any reference for how consistently basura this team has been, they haven't had a 50-win season since 1997. Now, as a Knicks fan, I understand that I have limited room to talk, but I'll be honest, not winning 50 games since Biggie died is absolutely insane. On top of this, they've never seen the NBA Finals, and a smaller but nonetheless hilarious anecdote is that on Basketball Reference, 3 of their top 12 players of all time are Emeka Okafor, Marvin Williams, and Cody Zeller. A true pantheon of greats. Now, on its own, this level of sustained incompetence is impressive, but once you consider the fact LaMelo was a player who was already being hailed as a questionable prospect and a guy who may not fit the prototypical image of a franchise championship winning point guard, you begin to see how fans have conflated these two images. And this has only been made worse by his consistent history of injuries throughout his young career. And following his second season where he was named as an all-star, LaMelo has yet to play 40 games in a season since then, further leading to many of his peers and young talented point guards in the East seemingly leapfrogging him in terms of perceived ranking and talent in the league. Mainly guys like Tyrese Maxey and the other guy for the Pacers, whatever his name is, have all taken that next step to near superstar status and left LaMelo in the metaphorical dust. And with these new kids on the block, everyone's been overlooking the killer in Charlotte. But make no mistakes about it, LaMelo is most definitely still him, and before he suffered yet another season-ending ankle injury last year, he was set to make that jump to the next level. In 22 games this past season, he averaged 24 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds, and showed some real flashes of becoming the guy for his team. And he had multiple stretches of games where he seemed to have just put it all together. Just before his first ankle injury of the season, LaMelo was absolutely torching the league in November, averaging 27 points and 8 assists on 47% from the field and 41.8% from 3 on 9 attempts a game. Now, the elephant in the room, not that one, the other one, is his defense. And I won't sugarcoat it. That hasn't really shown any signs of improvement. But I will say that the Hornets made some off-court moves this offseason that could potentially bode well for both LaMelo's and the Hornets' defensive future. Namely, they brought on a host of new coaches from the Boston Celtics, headlined by Charles Lee, who served as Joe Mazzulla's top assistant during their championship run. And according to Sports Illustrated, he has a 64% win percentage in 10 years of coaching, he's led multiple teams to having top 10 offenses and defenses, and he was a key assistant to 2 championship teams in the Bucks and Celtics. Will this be a step up from Steve Clifford, who not only had more coaching experience but was also brought in as a defensive specialist? Yeah, probably, because Clifford's rants to the media about lack of effort and care don't necessarily scream to me that he was doing the best job at connecting with his young team. What I'm saying is a healthy LaMelo Ball has looked like an absolute superstar in Charlotte, and with the potential culture and leadership change that a championship head coach is bringing in Charles Lee, don't be surprised if you see LaMelo Ball take that massive jump this season and establish his spot in the point guard hierarchy of the league. And speaking of LaMelo, a quick honorable mention, I'm going to say that Tre Mann also has an opportunity to really make a name for himself this season because Charles Lee wasn't the only addition to the Hornets coaching staff. They also went and added Kemba Walker as a player development coach, and he's someone who could provide some valuable insight to mentoring both Tre and LaMelo, and since Tre got some major opportunities last year, he also is liable to make a big jump this year. But enough about Charlotte. This brings us to our second player on the list, Jalen Johnson. The Atlanta Hawks have certainly had a offseason this year, headlined by multiple stories that all stand as a testament to just how unremarkable this franchise has consistently been. First off, they drafted what is being named as one of the least remarkable number 1 picks ever in Zachary Ricochet, and this was followed up by people calling for their starting 2-guard Bogdan to have a spot in the NBA, which just further proves nobody watches Atlanta Hawk basketball.
We do not care.
And these two stories alone are proof enough of that fact. But if you need any more convincing, look no further than the fact that on MLK Day, which has traditionally been a day where Atlanta has a home game to celebrate, the NBA decided to have them visit MSG to take on the Knicks. And I'll take my hater hat off long enough to congratulate you guys on getting off of DeJounte to bring in Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance, and the Charlotte legend Cody Zeller, and that does move you guys in an overall positive direction generally. But it doesn't do much in terms of changing that perception of you guys from being a mid-franchise. And part of the consequences of being such a mid-franchise is that some of your really good young talents get overlooked, and that's been the case for one Jalen Johnson. Johnson's had an interesting road, because following a Duke season that made it clear he had real point guard abilities, he unceremoniously quit the team in February to declare for the draft and get healthy. And this torpedoed his stock a little bit, leading to him falling to the 20th pick with Atlanta. While he saw limited opportunities as a rookie and dealt with a few injuries that have kept him from truly ascending, this past season, Johnson looked like he had fully made that jump to become a real difference maker and winning piece for Atlanta in the midst of their mediocrity. And this was no small feat. He went from 5 points to 16 points on 51% from the field, and he made incredible strides as a three-point shooter, shooting a career-best 35% from behind the arc on 3.6 attempts a game. And his improved scoring was really just the cherry on top, because as a 6'9" forward, he's already proven to be a freak athlete and extremely versatile defender who has the skills to stay in front of point guards on the perimeter while also being enough of a leaper to really deter and erase shots at the rim. Prior to his season-ending ankle injury, he was already making a strong case for most improved player, and I feel like it's a no-brainer that this upcoming season, that upward trajectory is naturally going to continue. On top of all of this, Johnson's size gives him an advantage over a lot of other forwards in the league, because he hasn't lost those ball handling and decision-making skills he used in his time at Duke, and this gives him a chance to be a real matchup nightmare for bigger fours. Especially if the Hawks look to move Onyeka into the 5 role and put Ricochet at the 3, it's trouble in the league. All the signs seem to be pointing to Johnson putting up a monster season this year, and if he spends a majority of his minutes at that 4 spot, a lot of people might get put on notice this year about how good he really is. But if you needed any more reason to invest in some Jalen Johnson stock this year, he's also entering a contract year, and while the Hawks have made him untouchable in the past, his alleged desire for a max level contract extension means he might start wilding out this year on the court. So for all 3 Hawks fans that are still out there, you guys are still going to be mid this year as usual, but y'all have a real hooper in Jalen Johnson. This brings us to our final player, Jaylen Green. I'm really not sure where to begin when talking about Jaylen Green because there's so much to be said about where he is now and how his career's gone thus far. I've said it time and time again, but I'll stand on my word that the class of 2020 is my personal favorite high school basketball class of all time, and the face of that class is undoubtedly Jaylen Green. I've talked about him at length on this channel before, and unfortunately, the main reason why I'm so fond of him is ironically the same reason why he, like LaMelo Ball, has become so maligned by NBA fans and basketball commentators alike. See, Jaylen was one of the main products of that 2020 mixtape era of hoops, where the main focus that was given to his game were all the highlight reel dunks and unique scoring moves, and as a result of this, he slowly began to become known as a quote-unquote highlight reel hooper in the national scene. And it was this reputation for highlight reel dunks and elite athleticism and overall potential as a hooper that resulted in him being hailed as the next Kobe Bryant. And as we've seen, this may have had lasting impacts on his ability to grow as a hooper. Jaylen is in an extremely similar situation to LaMelo, as he was also drafted to a franchise that's become known for its propensity to not play a traditional brand of winning basketball. And with Green being brought up in an environment with both coaching and front office dysfunction, as a young professional, it's a no-brainer that his game was going to be severely impacted. But unfortunately for Green, the story of lackluster player development and directionless coaching in Houston has been lost in favor of the narrative that Green is a guy who simply doesn't have a love for the game of basketball and enjoys the things that it brings him in superstardom. I went deeper into this concept on one of the earlier vids on this channel, but the point of this is that the circumstances surrounding Green in Houston have soured most fans on the idea of him being a meaningful player that's capable of taking that next step. Well, that was the story until this season. You see, I understand that the NBA news cycle moves super fast and we tend to either forget or just outright overlook certain moments in the season, but I'd like to remind us all of the generational march that Jaylen Green had this year. He somehow went from 17 points per game on 40% from the field and an abysmal 31.2% from three to absolutely torching the league with 27.7 points a game on 49.2% from the field and 40.8% from three on 9 attempts a game. And these weren't just empty stats either, because he helped lead his squad to a 13-2 record, which put them firmly in the race for a play-in spot and temporarily silenced a lot of those accusations of empty stats and shot-chucking inefficiency. Unfortunately, Jaylen ended up regressing back to earth after March and dropping back down to his usual 17 points a game, and it led to most people chalking the incident up to an outlier great month and continuing to overall count out Jaylen and the Rockets. But I think March Jaylen Green can be more than just a fluke. In this upcoming year, after having a full season with their championship coach in Ime Udoka, as well as having first-hand proof that his partnership with Şengün and Jabari Smith can be fruitful, we may not only see Green have a surge this year, but the Rockets as a team. And that first taste of potential playoff success, even though it ultimately eluded them, seems to have had an effect on Jaylen. And he's been inviting his Rockets teammates out to California to host a players-only minicamp, in a move that certainly points to a level of maturity and a dedication to winning that his detractors would say he's lacked in previous years. Those flashes that he showed in March, along with the talent that we all know he has as an athlete and a scorer, put Jaylen in a prime position to have a monster season this year. And once again, Jaylen Green is entering his 4th year and he's eligible for a max contract extension this upcoming offseason, so if none of what I said just now was convincing enough, just know that he's gonna be hooping with the bag in mind, and that's more than enough motivation for anybody. But with the Jaylen Green segment done, we've reached the end of the video. I just want to reiterate that these are just a handful of young guys who may have a chance to really take that next step this year, but we as NBA fans have become so used to this microwave era of instant production and gratification from our players that we've begun to prematurely count out a lot of young guys who still have room for growth. But this upcoming season, whether it be for fantasy purposes or just being able to tell your friends I told you so, keep an eye on these guys because they're ready to take off. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, sub, and hopefully I see you in the next one.